Morning, Chris.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I think we've got a quorum now and getting YouTube going, so that's up. All right. Okay, so it's 8:32 on October 2nd, and this is the Grand County Budget Advisory Board meeting. I'm going to call to order. Present, we have Chris Baird, Mallory Nassau, Elaine Gisler, Chris Kaufman, Jalen Hawks, Kevin Walker, Quinn Hall, and Zach Wachesik. So the first order of business on the action items is approval of the minutes for September 25th, 2020. Anybody have any corrections to the minutes? I sent out some edited minutes.
So yes, Chris, I appreciated your edits. Very well done. The only thing I would add is on the last page under G, Fund 32, Municipal Building Authority, the last sentence of that first paragraph isn't really quite accurate. The EMS has a new facility.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, not yet. You're right. So, we can just take that out. Is that all right?
Perfect. Yep.
Okay.
And
Any
with
other
that,
corrections before we take a motion? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I make that motion.
Is there a second?
I wasn't here, so I don't think I can second it, right?
I'll second it, Chris. Quinn.
Okay.
All right, good.
Jalen Hawks makes the motion to approve the minutes for September 25th. Quinn Hall seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Raise your hand or
Aye.
any opposed? Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. Minutes passed unanimously, all present. All right, now I just need to bring up the first budget that we'll review is the county treasurer's budget. Let me pull that up real quick and share the screen. Okay. So we haven't started into budgeting salaries and benefits yet. But we generally pull a lot of that data through from our accounting software, and it will just, pull everybody's salary and benefits costs, and then we'll plug all that information in, tidy it up, and that's kind of how we do salary and benefits. I suppose if somebody has a request for an increase in personnel, then we take that into account also, as we have in past years, with a separate spreadsheet. But that's why we're not budgeting salary and benefits, which oftentimes is, the biggest cost in a department. But it oftentimes is what it is, and the main changes that would affect those line items would be increases in benefits, renewal rates, and a COLA if there will be one. And those are decisions that the commission will make. Okay, so Chris Kaufman, did you want to just walk through this?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Mhm.
I can hear you.
Great. There's not a whole lot to say. It's the exact same budget amount, bottom line, as requested for 2020. There are certainly some unknowns as far as the travel line item that could end up being much lower, depending on whether or not travel seems appropriate next year for the various conferences that I would go to. Everything is pretty much in line with actual spending that's gone on. The mailing and postage and payment fees lines are new as of 2019, but what I'm requesting is in line with what was actually spent in 2019, and probably going to be pretty close to in line with what I spend this year. The majority of that hasn't been spent yet this year. So. Yeah, I'm not sure it's worth looking at each of these. Like I said, there's really not much change to what I've done in the past, but I'm certainly open for any questions that anybody has about it.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? There's some statistics that I plugged in here. We've got a 5-year average of actuals from 2015 to 2019, and then this column compares the entry for the 2021 budget with that average, and then there's also a comparison with 2019. So you can kind of see that we've switched up the way that we use some of the line items with regard to the 5-year average, but it's all very similar with regard to comparing it with 2019. Everyone good? Any
Yeah,
questions?
I think it looks good. I just do have a couple of questions. First, help me understand, where is it? Oh, so the 5-year average in mailings and postage, that seems quite a bit lower than what's being asked for. So help me understand that.
So that's a new account line item. So it didn't exist in 16, 17, and 18.
Okay.
Yeah. But in 2019, I spent 4,361, and it should be pretty similar to that this year. I always account for a potential for a little bit increase in postage or potentially more delinquent postcards I have to send out. So.
Right. Okay. And I guess in past budget cycles, Chris, it seems like even though we don't put the salaries and benefits in, it seemed like we had a comparison of the other costs in relation to how much it costed the year before, the expenses. Are we going to get that?
Hopefully we can get back to using that. Chris Kaufman and I created a spreadsheet where we download what we enter into Cassell Advantage and then plug it into the spreadsheet, which shows us that information.
Okay.
But we're still, we haven't got the full go-ahead yet, or maybe we're very close to being able to close 2019 from the auditors. And until we close 2019, the budget software won't roll over to the next year. It's stuck in 2019.
Huh. Okay.
So it's kind of just a technical issue with getting the budgeting software up and running. And so this is kind of, the scaled down version of that. But I'm hopeful that we get that closed, and next week we can start doing it like we normally do, which is to have everybody plug their budget into the budget software. And then we'll download that and import it into our spreadsheet with all those other statistics that we saw last year. But trying to recreate that without the budget software working, it throws a hiccup in the way that works.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, hopefully we'll get back to that other way of doing things that we did last year here next week. This is my interim solution. All right, any other comments on the treasurer's budget? We'll probably move through this agenda a little faster maybe than we thought, but got clerk auditor up next. And so is everybody ready to move on to clerk auditor budget? Okay, let me stop
Yes.
sharing that. Okay. Quinn, you want to go over your budget
Yeah, I
request?
just made everything. So in 2020, we actually canceled quite a few things that we had budgeted, and we zeroed those out for 2020. We had some more Cassell training to come down and help us offer a little bit better. Chris, I don't know if you can speak to the assessing and collecting. Why was that so high in 19? I took it back to the
That's
2020
because-
level.
So this is, in 2019, we were paying for our centrally assessed attorney out of that line item. And then we moved that budget over to non-department. So the budget for the attorney that represents us in centrally assessed appeals, it has been moved, and that's a big
Okay.
change. So the
So, yeah,
the remainder of that is going to be your costs associated with that's where a lot of the valuation notice costs come out of.
Okay.
And
Yeah, so I just took that back to 2020 levels. I don't think we'll spend anywhere near that in 2020, but that's what I projected for 21. Moved back the Cassell training item that we canceled from last year. That'd be great if we could get that. Our
Yeah.
guy item obviously is we'd love to remodel the window in the desk and see if we could get it more like the assessor's office. But say I would gladly trade that remodel for an increase in staff. If we could get a grant writer, then I don't window. But
So, I mean, yeah, and I guess the status of your 5th deputy position at this point is just, there's a hiring, we're kind of in a hiring freeze.
yeah,
And so I guess we can evaluate whether or not we need to maintain that, but I mean, that position is technically approved. And it's just a matter of, I think, maybe retooling that position to be more specific to grant management and accounts receivable as we discussed, and I think we want to probably discuss that with the commission. And it's a fairly technical position, and so I think, the starting grade for deputies is 3, and then, depending on experience can go up to 5, but I think it's going to be pretty difficult to actually find the right person for that position at that grade, so that's a little bit of an obstacle there. However, I think that's one thing that we should probably put on our list of, and I can make a note up here if it lets me. Just unprotect this. I'll just make a note of grants/AR. So like I said, the position already exists, but I think that it would be good to rewrite the job description to make it a bit more specific and reevaluate the grade. But that kind of coincides also, I think, with this intense training budget. Accounts receivable has never really been set up right. And so I think getting that set up and getting that person trained and the rest of the staff trained on how to interact.
I agree. I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, and we budgeted that for 2020, but we axed it.
Yeah.
You know, partly to save money, but also because the reality of bringing staff down to train during COVID didn't seem like it was going to happen. I know that a lot of the Cassell employees were working from home.
Yeah, every
So
time
I
we get
doubt
them on
that one.
support, they're all working from home, it seems like, so.
So, yeah, I don't think it, until they get back to the point where they're comfortable doing field training, and hopefully that'll be next year. But I think that's really important. And just getting the other staff trained on all the ins and outs of Cassell would be great too.
So yeah, that was our only really big item that we kind of, like a wish item, is to get that window remodeled out at the front and have it more like the assessor's office. I've talked with Sean a little bit. We can move the door over to the north wall where we briefly discussed doing it with some sort of COVID money this year, and it just didn't seem feasible with the election and how busy we were. So anyway, that's my pie in the sky wish item.
Yeah. We already put a window in, right? Plus that speaker thing.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's serviceable. It's not ideal, but it's serviceable.
All right, and so you don't think that it would, if we continue, Chris Kaufman, if we continued the improvement of that, do you think they would qualify this year for CARES Act money?
Me or Chris Kaufman?
Chris Kaufman, or either, I guess.
So the rules about what is or isn't, necessary for the pandemic are not spelled out clearly. So that would be something we could run by Christina, but there seems to be quite a bit of leeway there. It kind of says if you think it's necessary, then it might be, but we don't really know for sure. But if it facilitates customer interactions that without exposing people, then I think there's a reasonable case to be made.
Yeah, and I would argue that's kind of our main idea of it, is that it would decrease the number of public that just walk into the office. Different doorway and then a window there that we could access better. Right now, you're right, we've got the little window there, but we have to walk around the desk and get over to it to sort of put any papers through. It's working, but it's definitely not ideal. So yeah, I would argue that this is at least somewhat a safety measure to keep the general public out of the office. So.
Well, maybe, how did you come up with that figure? Did you get any quotes or anything?
I talked to Sean, and that was as close as I got. Was Sean said he thought that's about what it would cost.
Well, maybe we should consider if we want to do it this year and use CARES Act money.
Yeah, if we anytime after the election. I mean, obviously, we don't want a construction crew in here anytime between about the 10th of November. But if someone could bang it out between the 10th and the 31st of December, that'd be, we'd be open to it then.
Yeah, because I mean the total that we'd get if we got all three tranches is about 1.21 million, which is going to be more than we'll have in eligible reimbursable expenses
Sure.
for our own selves, and so it might be something to consider this year if we can pull it off.
Okay, I'll talk to Sean a little bit more today.
Okay.
Other than
Any
that,
other
I think it's all pretty much the same as 2020, or right in line with it, and slight increases, but not.
Okay, and then, yeah. Looks like, yeah, I think I'm gonna need to bump this, so did you plug this in, Quinn, this 23,000 for equipment
Yeah.
maintenance?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what the number was that we had exactly to date, but it wasn't that high.
Well, to date, when I ran this report, which was, fairly recently, you're up to 21,273. And in 2018, 2019, so 2018 we were at 30,825, and then 28,716.
Okay, maybe that one needs to be a little higher.
Yeah, the budget as it sits right now is 30,109. I would think that it'd probably be closer to that. I don't know that I would drop that down that much.
All right, bump it up. Fine with me.
Maybe go like 29. This is for the 2020 end of year budget. So normally we only do one at the end of the year, but we did a mid-year budget amendment due to COVID. And so this column right here, this 2020 projection, is what we'd be looking at potentially for our amended end of year amended budget. And oftentimes, I like to wait kind of to the last minute to fill this out because we have more actual costs, and so I can get we can get a lot closer to what it's going to be the longer we wait. But obviously we can't wait too long. But this needs to be a component of the tentative budget that we present to the commission.
Okay.
The end of year amended budget and the proposed tentative 2021 budget. And so not everyone's filled this projection out yet, but we will.
Oh, and you're right. I'm looking at Cassell now. We're at 20, like you have there. We're at 21.2 now, and yeah, if we have 3,000, yeah, we're gonna have 9,000 more if we have 3,000 every month for October, November, and December. So yeah.
All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions on the clerk auditor's budget here?
Yeah, Quinn, did you say that on the assessing and collecting line, now that you understand what went into that, was that droppable or not?
No, so
Or is
that's
10,000 about right?
That's about right. It was so much higher before, but then Chris made another account for the assessing and collecting fees because in 2019, Chris, if you can scroll back, it was 60,000. And so 10,000 is actually a significant decrease from 2018, 17.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and that's dropping out all that essentially assessed attorney fees and moving it. So that's a big change.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We ready to move on? We might have to try to, I don't know, I don't think that, let me stop sharing so I can see all the participants here. We're moving along faster than what the schedule was. So next up we've got maintenance. Maybe I can call Sean and see if he would be able to get on sooner. Hold on a sec while I call. Hey, how you doing? Good. So we're moving along a bit faster on our budget. Would you be able, how soon would you be able to join the Zoom meeting? Okay. Did you, hey Sean, did you accept the invite? If you go to your calendar and just click on it, it probably has all the links and everything. It's all right, yeah, we're moving a little fast. Yep. Pretty soon. Okay. All right. Can you hear us, Sean? Can you speak?
Unmute. There we go.
All right.
Show video. Okay.
Okay. Can you see it, Sean? You want to go over your budget that's on the screen here?
So am I supposed to talk about it or what's up?
Yeah, I mean, if you just wanted to go over some of these things you plugged in, and if there's anything notable to bring up,
Yeah.
you know, changes from especially changes from prior years
Okay.
or anything like that.
Gotcha. So let's see. Travel. I don't know if I'm gonna be doing any travel. I might do some travel today because we might, or sometime later this year. That might get eaten up. Office supplies. I think I've been coding the office supplies wrong to the wrong budget. So that's why it doesn't show any use. That's my bad. I'm sorry. Let's see. Equipment maintenance. I guess that really didn't change much, did it? I did use.
So yeah, I mean, it's 5,000 is the same budget, and the average over the last 5 years is looking like about 200 on average. Then I guess there was a couple of years where you got up over 5.
Yeah, I think that's probably years that Marvin had like transmissions go out on him on the trucks.
Okay.
And so that's mostly my stuff has been replacing tires. And I've pretty much replaced all the tires on my trucks except for my maintenance truck, which I don't use very often. So I think those tires should be good for another couple of years, I think.
So is there anything that you can think of that would necessitate that higher level, that like 5,000 amount off the top of your head? Or do you think it'd be more like an average year?
Oh, next year?
Yeah.
Um, and you're saying the average was like $2,000? Is that what I'm seeing?
2,200, this figure right here.
Okay.
2,263 is the average.
Yeah, I think other than transmissions going out and needing maintenance on trucks, I don't see anything really changing. We might, I don't know. I mean, my trucks are old, so you never know.
Yeah.
Um,
What if we put it at 3?
I'll take 3.
All right. And you don't think you're gonna have any more expenditures out of that this year?
Let's see. Is the 6? Let's see. Hold on. The 662. I mean, I could buy tires for my truck, but I think that's going to be more than what we have in there. It'll probably be more like $1,000. I could probably replace two of them instead of all of them.
Well, the budget is set right now at 5,000, and you've spent 663-ish, and so I'm just thinking for this year, not next year, but for this year, much more. You think the total will be for?
So I've only spent 666 of the budget.
662 is what you've spent so far out of that line.
I'm pretty sure I've spent more than that.
Well, if you did, it got coded somewhere else.
Because I've bought at least 6 tires for my trucks. So, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not showing up in the year-to-date report. So maybe it got coded somewhere else.
Because I also pitched in to buy tires for our boom truck for Osta. So I think that should have come out of there unless it came out of the maintenance. I don't know.
Okay.
So I thought I'd spent most of that. Sorry. Maybe I misunderstood this, but
Just get it.
Where'd you buy the tires, Sean?
we get them from Cody has us get them from Chips or whatever it is now.
Grand
Okay, I'll
Tire.
look.
To make a note, we might want to check and see where those expenditures went
Yeah.
so that we can check that. All right, moving on, building grounds and maintenance. You want to kind of explain, Sean, what you charged to that account?
So building grounds and maintenance, I usually just do like just general little things here and there, and big things. Mostly like if if the guys need to get paint for striping putting a paint down on the ground for parking slots in the back here. We buy paint. We buy paper products. A lot of the the toilet paper and stuff like that. And then I think a lot of the semi major repairs that come up out of nowhere will get coded to that.
So the average, though, Sean, is about, close to 32,000 is the 5-year average.
Right.
So,
But
and it looks like we bumped this line item up quite a bit. I can't remember why this is so high.
So remember, this was originally 2 budgets. I had buildings and grounds for the courthouse, and then
Oh, yeah.
buildings and grounds for the outbuildings.
You're right. Yeah, we did
Yeah.
consolidate 2 different
Yeah.
departments, so that's
Yeah.
a difference. Okay. And we did that this year. It's the first year, actually, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
Sean's budget used to be split between 2 different departments, and I'm not sure why that was. And so there was no real reason for it. So to simplify, we took the budget from the other department, maintenance department, and consolidated it into this one. So I think we do have to kind of keep.
Yeah, it's kind of a new trend for this one.
So you're up. Year to date is 31,523, and so this 19 is obviously not going to be enough to even cover that.
Say that again.
See this right here. So Sean, just so you're aware, this 2020 projection is, the end of year total that
What
we're
will be
projecting.
What'll be left over?
Well, this column right here is not what's going to be left over. This is going to be what the total is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
So, you're already up to 31,523.
Okay.
So we need to, we don't need to do it necessarily right now, but trying to project what that's really going to end up being by the end of the year. You plugged in 19,000. I'm not sure where that came from, but it's obviously not enough.
So I was thinking the projected was what was going to be left over at the end of the year.
No, the projected is going to be the total. So this will be what we amend our end of year budget to be.
My bad. All right.
So that would be like 65,000 minus 19,000. 46 would be the amount spent. Is that what you were trying to do?
Yeah, I think I was only going to be like, I don't see us spending more than $1,500 or $15,000 by the end of the year, honestly.
All right, so. Okay. Well, it sounds like about 46,000 would be sufficient.
Yeah.
And so how do you figure that plays into next year?
Well, and I when I put that in, I kind of started questioning it. Honestly, we probably could maybe drop $5,000 off that. I just don't know. With this year being so, we didn't do a lot of things that I wanted to do this year because I didn't have the staff. So it's hard to judge what that's going to be.
So you say that we can drop 5 off?
Yeah, I think we could drop 5. I mean, maybe 5. Geez, I don't know. I don't know. I like to say 10, but I don't know. I don't want to give that much up.
All right. Then utilities. 2019 was 86,000. For year to date, 60,665. And so, probably keeping this at 90 is probably safe. Seems like.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Well, and a couple of years ago, we had some upgrades done to lighting systems,
Mm-hmm.
where there's LED lights put in instead of the fluorescents. So that's probably why you're seeing the lower numbers there.
When
But,
did that
I mean,
happen?
I want to say it was right there in 2017, somewhere
Alright.
in there.
Well, there was a big drop between 2014 and 2015.
Maybe
then
it was
kinda-
2015.
Kind of stabilized after that. Looks like 86.5 would cover
Yeah,
it historically.
yeah. I think high 80s probably be perfect for that one.
Maybe we'd go like 87.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris and Sean, just to jump in, I think those tires, it looks like they got coded to 10, 4150, 250, 4160.
It got coded to what?
10,
other-
41, 10, 4150, just the general equipment maintenance.
Oh, we stopped using that.
Well,
Are you still using the other department, Sean, for coding?
No, this was my courthouse, my 10 4160 250. Was that the right one? Was that the one that you said?
Which one did you say, Quinn?
There's a invoice from OSTA in June for $2,100 for Chips Grand Tire and 10, 4150, 250.
Yeah, that got miscoded. Will you make a note of that, Quinn, so we can move it out of there?
Yeah, you bet.
4150,
Yeah.
that department is the one that we canceled the entire budget for and moved it over to here. So nothing should be going into 4150. I think that was Sean's old budget that we consolidated into this one. So anything actually that was coded to 4150 needs to get moved over here.
All right.
Yeah, it
How
looks like
much
that
was that?
20. It looks like that $2,100 is the only thing in that account for this.
Okay, so that means that how much did you say it was, Quinn?
2,100.
Now that I'm not sure, but I think that was supposed to get split between 3 departments. But I've got an invoice for my tires. How much is that, Vesta? $314. Okay.
And it was on the,
Okay. And that was 4160 250.
yes, it's 4160, 250, yeah.
All right. So when I coded my last set of tires, I did 4160 250.
That's the
Okay.
correct one.
Just put it in type in the wrong number. And who did you split those tires with?
It was myself, Osta, and damn it. It might have been the road department.
Well, I guess you should find out. Like, OSTA is in the general fund too, and so it's not a big deal. We don't necessarily have to split it up because it'll all come out in the wash if it's in the general fund. But if there is an expense to the road department, then we should split that out because that's a whole different fund.
Gotcha.
Anyway, we can look into that. Okay, Sean, so let's move on to the fuel.
And once again, that projection, I screwed that up. Sorry.
Yeah, so the average over the last 5 years is about 2,000, a little over 2,000.
Yeah.
So probably 15, I don't know if 1,500 would be enough to cover you.
I don't
Just
know
never-
why I did. I don't know why I did that. That doesn't look. Yeah. Sorry. I don't know what I did there.
It looks to me like 2,200 would be enough.
All right. Yeah. On average, what has that been normally? Like 3,000, 2,000 in there? Okay.
$2,024 on average over the last 5 years.
Oh, but how much did we put in there last year?
2,500 is the budget
25. Okay.
for this,
Yeah.
for 2020.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think that that's probably what this 2020, do you think you spent less fuel with the furloughs?
I guarantee it.
Maybe we can put that down more closer to 2 for 2020. All right, professional and technical. This would be on average 3,000. This is probably like, when you hire somebody else to come and clean the drains or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it,
In 2019, you spent 4,800, which was kind of more than usual. The average is 3,000.
okay. How much did I spend of it this year?
This year so far, you've spent
27.
2,000.
Okay.
2,778.
Okay.
So how much more do you think you have to spend this year?
I think I have one more. What's it called? The grease trap needs to be cleaned. They clean it, I think, in December. That's usually about $600. So, and then I might have the windows cleaned professionally, which is actually quite cheap. So,
So I think we'd probably drop that to 4 and be fairly safe, I think.
and we did 4,500 last year.
Well, last year in 2019, we actually went 4,800, but it was
Really?
unusual
Oh,
as compared with other prior
There might have
years.
been something. Yeah.
Because in 2018, you spent 2,700, then in 2017, you spent 1,586, or Marvin did, or whoever, and so it's a little high in 2019, but the average is about 3,000 over the last 5 years.
All right. Okay.
So I'm thinking 4 would cover it. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think 4 would cover it.
And cell phone allowance should be more or less the same.
Yeah. Ain't much.
Special department supplies. So with this one, are you trying to say that you'll?
I need to get some stuff, and I just haven't done it because no one's had to use the stuff. I'd like to get some roof safety equipment. I don't know how how much that'll cost. I think that's roughly for the setup. I'd like to get 2 or 3 of them. They're about $500 a piece. So, and then safety glasses, gloves, my boots come out of there.
Special department, you don't charge that to,
Oh,
well,
am I doing the wrong? Yeah, no, that's special department. I do special department like safety stuff.
Okay,
So
so that's like consumable safety type supplies?
yeah,
Or-
yeah.
The average on that is about 3,500 over the last 5 years.
Hello. Yes. What you need? Oh. Hmm. Okay.
So how about if we put it at the average, around 3,500?
35. Yeah. Okay.
Year to date, you've only spent 302.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And so knowing that you've only spent 302, how much more do you think you'll spend by the end of the year?
Honestly, probably maybe 1,000. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe we can drop that.
Okay. And now, inventory. Looks like the average over the last 5 years is about 2,300 for inventory. What do you have in mind what inventory you might
Yeah.
purchase this year? Or
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. Just let us know what you might spend this year and next year for inventory.
Well, I need mowers. My mowers are pushing, 8, 9 years old, and they've all been repaired beyond recognition, and they've become unsafe, in my opinion. So I'm hoping to get at least 2 mowers, backpack blower, a hedge trimmer, and a weed eater
For next year or this year?
for this year.
So how much total is that going to be?
Well, I think mowers, if you get a decent one's roughly $300 a piece. A backpack blower is going to be another 300. Maybe $1,500.
1,500 for all that stuff?
Yeah.
You haven't got anything coded to that yet.
No. Yeah. I kind of was hesitant to buy things this year just because of not knowing what we were doing. So I was holding off. Sorry.
Right. And then, now let's talk about next year.
Next year,
Again, for the average is, like I say,
22.
2,300.
Okay. I think that's probably a good number to bring it down to.
2,300.
Yeah, 2,300. I mean, if I can get my stuff this year, then I think that'll be good.
All right, making some progress here. So, and are you going to spend anything on schooling this year?
I'd like to get the guys CPR training or get them
Okay.
certified. Oh.
400.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was what they said it was.
And like the same amount for next year?
Yeah, because I'd like to switch off doing CPR and then first aid every other year.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any comments or questions on our maintenance budget? Okay, thank you, Sean. I think we got
Hey.
it nailed down here.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Should I look for my tire purchases and resubmit them?
Well, it sounded like Quinn found them already. He just needs to move the
Oh,
expense
okay.
over.
Gotcha.
So it looked like it went 41.250 instead of 41.60.
Yeah, that $2,100 in
Oh.
June is the only thing that's on that 4150 account. That's the only charge to that account this year.
So, yeah, Quinn, if you just want to do a journal entry to move that over to this one. And when you're doing expenses, you credit where it's coming from and debit where it's going to. Kind of the reverse of what you do for moving revenue. Anyway, we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
And let's see, do we have, who have we got here? Looks like, Tim, are you on? Can you hear? Can you talk?
Yeah, I can talk.
All right, let me pull your budget up and we'll get going. So next up is the weed control budget. This one's actually split between the general fund and also a grant fund, and so there's kind of two parts to this budget, plus some revenue lines to talk about. Let me just get this all set up here. Okay. So this first part that we're looking at is the general fund portion of Tim's budget. There is a line item in here for revenue also in the general fund that I think, Tim, that's for when you do work on private property, is that right? What's that revenue line that goes into the general fund?
Yeah, it's anytime we do work on private property that's not part of a grant that we'll charge to the landowners.
Okay, so we haven't, I'm not showing that we brought anything in this year. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, right now, everything that we're doing is on grants. We've got a lot of grant funding to be able to get spent to this year, and we've had problems with people being sick and staying out and having to stay home for taking care of their kid when the schools closed down.
Yeah. So do you expect that we're not going to bring anything into that for the rest of this year?
Now, the BOM funding that we get, which is $25,000 that goes to the end of June, we'll be having some money from the BOM. I'm not sure exactly how much that is.
Well, I'm just talking about this one. No, I'm not talking right now about the grant side. This is the general fund account.
Yeah, but the money we get from the BOM does go into the general fund.
Well, it should, but this is a different line. I mean, the historical revenue for this is about close to 4,000. And we probably should transfer some money from grants up into here. But from, looks like 2016 on, the only thing that's been receipted in to this revenue account is probably just what private parties are paying. I mean, you're right, we probably should transfer some money up into the general fund to cover expenses that the general fund's been covering and get reimbursed. But for now, let's just talk about private revenue from private parties.
Yeah, currently, I don't think we're gonna be doing anything on private property. But I know that you're mentioning from some of the others, for some of the grants where they pay everything, anything for myself or Robbie or equipment could go back into the general fund.
All right. Yeah, I'll look into this because I think that a lot of that grant money that is intended to offset general fund expenditures hasn't been getting transferred since like 2020. The last time I saw a big transfer was like 2015, so I think we need to transfer that balance up. So I'll look into that. So first off then, on the expense side, let's just go over the general fund expenses. So for subscriptions and memberships, you've got down 700, and the average over the last 5 years is 845. You think 700 is going to cover you next year?
I think so because I don't anticipate anybody going to the NYSMA conference. That way there, they can be able to figure out what's going on here locally before they think about that other.
Okay. And then public notices. In 2019, you did spend 500. I'm not sure what that was for. What did you notice in 2019?
There may have been a couple of extra times that we published the general notice to control noxious weeds.
Okay. Because normally, on average, it's like 240. But, so anyway, is 500 is what you're thinking you're gonna spend again next year?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like having just a little bit extra in case we do need to publish anything else.
Okay. So then next on travel, 2,500 appears to be right on with the average over the last 5 years. Office expenses are higher than average. So your average office expenses over the last 5 years is 255.
Yeah, we're looking at
450
trying to
is,
replace a few things like staplers, so it'll probably be closer to average.
you think it'll be more like around, I mean, I think if we dropped it to 3, that would cover you. Okay?
Okay,
Then equipment maintenance, your average over the last 5 years is around 5,400. In 2019, you spent 3,450. You're up to $2,000 roughly this year. So I'm thinking 6 looks like pretty good. Close to the average with a little bit of wiggle room.
yeah, I know we gotta buy a couple more tires or maybe even more than that before the end of the year.
All right. Average on utilities is about 2,300. You spent 2,202 last year. So I'd say 2,600 is a bit high. It's never been that much before.
Yeah, I never know how much the utilities are gonna go up or if they're gonna increase them, so that's the thing, only thing I worry about.
Yeah. Well, they might go up a bit, but I don't think they. don't know, I think 24 would probably cover it. That's 200 more than 2019. I don't know, maybe 25. I think 26 is too much, but you okay to just keep it the same as 2020 at 2,500?
Yeah, I just don't know if it went over. I don't know what we would be able to do about it.
Amend the budget. I mean, we're trying to get, there's always the possibility, you know, to do the end of year budget amendment, when things aren't exactly what we want, but I don't really like building a huge amount of contingency into our budget, because if you know, this is a part of what everyone has to understand with regard to budgeting, is that if you budget that money as contingency, that means it's not available for anybody else in the general fund to budget that same money. And so I try to get pretty dang close to what we're really thinking that we're gonna spend, so that we're not, you know, inflating the contingency in the general fund budget especially. So that's just kind of why I'm, you know, drilling down into the details here, just to try to make sure that we're as close to reality as we can get. And if there are minor changes that need to be made at the end of the year, that's no big deal. But it's just helpful, I think, to try to be as realistic as possible, for the sake of making sure that we're maximizing the use of our resources across the entire general fund. So 2,500 looks to be on par for fuel with past couple of years at least. So I think that one looks good. Cell phone allowance should stay the same. Special department supplies looks good to me, close to average. It looks like it varies a bit. What do you charge to that, Tim? What do you charge to special department supplies?
Well, it's personal protective equipment, and it's also with the herbicides, and I know I just ordered some more herbicide. So for a project that we need to be able to do, we could use something that we could have borrowed from another agency, but so that's the main things that come out of that.
Okay. These other smaller ones, they're a little higher than average, but the numbers are so small, it doesn't really make much difference. And inventory, do you know what you're gonna purchase next year?
Yeah, next year I asked Matt, my computer, the one that I'm using, is a Windows 7, and they say they can't update it anymore.
Oh, yeah. So are you getting a new computer or a new operating system? Or both?
Just getting a new computer.
So you think 1,000 will cover that?
That's the price that Matt quoted me.
Okay. All right, then public education looks close to average. Are you gonna spend anything this year on public education? Is that your calendars?
Yeah, it's the calendars, and we'll be doing 750 this year.
In 2020 also?
Yeah, for 2020, that's what we'll order this year.
Okay. Okay, so that covers the general fund side of Tim's budget. Any questions on this general fund part of the budget before we go over to the grant side? Okay, so then we also have the budget for, bringing in Tim's grants, we actually have been receiving, let's see, it doesn't look like you've filled out your grant fund budget, Tim.
I didn't even notice that on there.
So there's just a couple line items to look at in your grant fund budget. The big one really, I think, to start off with is just sort of trying to understand what we expect to bring in grant revenue. So in 2018, we brought in $90,842. In 2019, we brought in $101,640. And we're up to about $58,100 this year so far. Do you have like a tabulation of all the revenue that you expect to come in, Tim?
Well, I just need to be able to add. I can add up right now how much we've already spent that hasn't been invoiced yet. And I can do that right now, then I'll let you know.
All right, yeah, because we've kind of been budgeting like 65,000 for that revenue, but the actual revenue that's come in the last couple of years is a lot more than that. And we've discussed, potentially making more use of that, by getting employees working more. So really, I mean, realistically, once we plug in all of the, expense side, it should match with our revenue side. And so getting an accurate understanding of what our grant revenue is really going to be, I think we kind of need to revise that because it's not, over the last couple of years, it's not been an accurate figure. So I guess I can just make a note here that you'll work on the grant revenue, total grant revenue across all your grants for this year and next year.
Yeah, right now we're looking at, since June, or I guess the 1st of July, at $16,759.75. That hasn't been invoiced yet.
So let's see, we got 58. Tell me what that figure is again.
16,759.75.
And is that all? Or do you think there'll be more than that?
There'll be more than that as I update what we've done through September. And as we go in October, November, and December, there'll be more money added onto it.
All right, well, if you can kind of get a better estimate of what that is and just, I guess, let me know later. Because with that, if we add 16,000, we're up to about close to 75,000. And if there's going to be more than that, then we can add it in also. But, this is giving us an idea of how to budget your salary and benefits on that side of things. Or, to transfer some of that money over to cover general fund expenses also. So I think what we need to do is just work a little bit more on revising and getting more accurate revenue.
I know some of our grants are start in the middle of the year, like in 1st of July, and they go to the end of June the next year.
Yeah.
We have $118,373. I'm not counting what's been done in September that we have left of the grants to spend. But that also includes the BLM funding.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll work on that. I mean, this grant budget's gonna have to be balanced to a zero sum. And so in order to figure out how much we can budget in salary and benefits and hours, et cetera, we'll need to know first what the revenue is gonna be. And so I think we might have to revisit this grant portion once we get a little bit better and more refined projection for the revenue. And mostly it's really going to end up being how we budget salary and benefits and how many hours, et cetera, that we put in. This miscellaneous, this big number right here, this 10,237 in miscellaneous supplies, that's really just after we budgeted salary and benefits plus some of these travel costs. That's just more or less what was left over, you know, after the other revenues, pulling some revenue from the balance that you have. And so we can work on more accurately budgeting those expenses. And realistically, like we were talking about, some of this grant funding really should be going to offset some of the general fund expenses also. So I'm just going to make a note also on this side of it. So it's looking like, for some reason, we didn't put a budget in for special department supplies on the grant side. And that looks like it maybe was a mistake because you have, you know, 4,600 already in year-to-date expenses. So for that, Tim, what do you expect to spend in 2020 in your special department supplies under the grants?
I'd probably think it's probably going to be close to that or maybe $5,000.
I'm just going to like take it out of this one here and move it up there because it's not going to get spent out of miscellaneous. And then the travel looks, your average is 4,700 on travel. So I'm thinking like around 5 would probably be pretty sufficient in that. Unless we end up, you know, getting people out working more.
Yeah, a lot of that's coming with per diem for some, when they go camping, and then we've been
Yeah.
having to go to some of these trainings so that they can be able to learn, you know, some of the things I've been hearing about for years.
Yeah. All right, I think you and I have to talk a little bit more to refine this. Like I say, once we get some more accurate figures for what we expect with revenue, then we'll use that to kind of flesh out the rest of the grant fund budget and also what we might transfer over to the general fund to offset those expenses. Anybody have any questions, comments on the weed control budgets? All right. And let me get off this screen. And is Bill on yet? Doesn't look like it. John, is that John Cortez is on? Can you speak, John? All right, well, let me call over to see if Bill is able to jump on. Hey, this is Chris. Is Bill around? Okay. Yeah, just let him know that we're kind of running early on our budget advisory board, and if it's possible to have him jump on the Zoom meeting. Okay. Thank you. So let's see. Maybe I'll try to call over and see if John, he shows up, but it doesn't show up as having any video or audio. I've got to jump over to the recorder if Bill doesn't get on. Let me see. Hey, John, it's Chris. Chris Baird, how are you? So we're running a bit early on our budget meeting. Are you logged into the Zoom meeting? I see a John, but I don't know if it's you. Are you able to hear or talk? Oh, okay. Are you available to dial in now? Okay. So yeah, let's just we'll skip to the recorders here and see and get John going. Okay, talk to you in a minute. So we're just waiting for. looks like Bill might have beat him. Hey there, Bill. We were kind of juggling around. We're running a little early. I just asked John to call in, so I didn't know how long you would be. Can you hear us, John?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So, since I already brought up the recorders, we just go through that one real quick. I don't think it'll take too long, Bill, maybe like 10, 15 minutes. Recorder's budget's pretty straightforward. Can you just hang out a bit? We'll get back to you, Bill. I don't know if he can hear or talk. All right. Can you see the screen, John, with your budget?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. It's looking like you just kept everything the same.
There is one thing.
Inventory looks like it went up.
Yeah. And I do need to get another CAD program. Ours is outdated, and it's getting harder and harder to use.
Your CAD program?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So like, what kind of what program is that?
Yeah, it's TrueCAD,
Okay.
and it's a 16-bit program, so it won't work on the newer computers.
And is that the 1,500 increase?
No,
Okay.
that's in case I need new computers. I'll probably need 1 or 2 this year, hopefully. And
So this year you need 1 or 2 this year?
I think so.
So you've spent $785,
Mm-hmm.
and your budget this year is $1,500.
Yeah, for last year
Well,
or this year.
yeah, it gets a little confusing, but
Right.
this year, 2020, you're at $1,500
Okay.
budget, and you've spent $785.
Mm-hmm.
Do you expect that $1,500 will be enough for this year?
Yeah, it might be. Uh-huh.
Okay. And then you doubled that for next year.
Yeah, I did. Because, some of these computers are pretty old. I think the 1,500 will work. I don't think I need the 3,000.
Okay. Your miscellaneous supplies, why do you have I guess that budget, it has a budget of 1,000 for this year, and you placed it for next year, but it's, its average is $122 over the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And back in 2014, you spent $680, but besides that, it's not been anywhere near 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think you really need, line item?
Probably knock it off 500.
Okay. And then special department supplies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the average over the last 5 years is about 3,500.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you need to go more than average, or?
No, I'd like to leave that because, I did use a lot of it in 2017 and 2016, and so I'm feeling like this next year might be another big year.
Okay. And professional services looks close to the average.
Hmm.
Little for fuel. Equipment maintenance. Yeah, looks little wiggle room, but not too much. In your office supplies, you had one big year back in 2018. This kind of bumps the average up.
Right.
But yeah, so 2,500 looks to probably to cover that.
Hmm.
And then 1,500, is that like for UAC or?
Yeah, or if I need to go to or send someone to school.
What do you expect this year with regard to travel?
I don't think I'm going to use the 1,500 this year, but I would like to keep it for next year.
Okay. So you don't think you'll do any travel at all this year?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Make note of that. And then I guess some money in public notices.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm going to use that this year, but I would like to keep it for next year
All right.
in case I have to do some more public notices.
Okay. All right. Seems okay to me. Anybody have any questions or comments on the recorder's budget? Okay, I think we got it, John. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bill, you ready?
Yep.
All right, let me just get your spreadsheet up here. All right. So your budget for subscriptions and memberships looks on par. And then what's this NFIP notification?
So that's the outreach we have to do for the floodplain stuff. We have to
Okay.
notify all the affected residents. And then we'll be doing different outreach every year for that CRS program. We're hoping to be able to put them into the tax notices like we've done in the past. And I think that was about 450 last time to send it to everyone. We're going to be targeting just the people that have property that touches the floodplain. So I think we can get it done a little bit.
You've doubled up on the tax valuation notice or the tax bill notice in the past?
Oh, we've added a flyer into the tax notice.
So would that be the tax notice that Quinn sends out or that Chris Kaufman sends out?
Chris Kaufman.
All right. All right. So.
I've never seen that go out with the tax bill.
We've sent them in the past for what requires a building permit, things like that. We haven't done it in a few years, but we figured that might be a good way to do this one to reach certain people. We've also talked about putting in on our Facebook page and other ways to do outreach. So we may not have to do the mailings, but I think it just gives us an extra resource. Again, these maps just went live April 3rd. And we have been getting a lot of calls from affected individuals. If you have a mortgage, you're probably going to get a notice from your mortgage company that you have to have flood insurance. So to help soften that blow and let it come from us saying that, hey, you might be getting notified by your mortgage company, and here's some of the benefits of that flood insurance, and here's ways to mitigate that cost.
All right, well, yeah, you can work out the details on that with Chris Kaufman at a different time, if that is possible. So for travel, what does no ABM mean?
So every February we go to the annual business meeting and education conference down in St. George. This year they're not going to have it, so that's why we're not going to spend any more out of that line item this year. Next year I would like to put some in, but I've cut that in half because a lot of Cole's travel is reimbursed by ICC for being on that committee.
So when we get that money, does Jana just receipt it straight back into that account to offset?
Yes.
Expense? All right. And office supplies, looks like it's on par with 2019. Actually down from the average.
Yeah, we tried to cut a little bit of that out. Our computers are probably, according to Matt, they're scheduled to be replaced, but they still work and do the job. They're not slow. If it's not broke, we don't want to fix it.
Well, that would be more of an inventory line or expense.
Yeah, the rest of it's printer stuff and rubber bands and paper and things like that.
So yeah, I mean, like I guess the difference between like inventory and supplies, supplies are consumable, and inventory is, non-consumable purchases that are less than $5,000. So that's, the general distinction that I try to get people to code according to.
So that was office supplies were.
So if you do have computers needs, we would want to factor that into inventory, not office supplies.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of that in the office supplies is just the paper and the printer ink and miscellaneous folders and things like that.
All right. Quinn, do you have Cassell up?
Yeah.
Can you look up this equipment maintenance, do an account inquiry? It looks like, there's only $28 so far. And so I'm thinking something might not be getting coded right for 2020.
Well, and I'm wondering if that was for the maintenance of the vehicles. It's really the only equipment maintenance we have is our vehicles. And I think a lot of work got done to just vehicle in 2019 budget. And then this year, I think it was something minor.
Well, yeah, maybe it would be.
To it on up to date on that.
Well, that's what's in there. I don't know if there's anything missing. I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and I don't know where Cody puts that or if he puts it in regularly or how that works.
All right, well,
Yeah, that's all I see in there, Chris, is that 2826 to Kane Lands Auto.
all right, does that sound right, Bill?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And again, I mean, talking with Cody, we're probably going to be looking at needing some new vehicles here pretty soon. Both of ours are hand-me-downs that are, well, actually, Jeff's truck was new. Just got over, I think over 150 on it, and he said within the 5 years it was going to need to be replaced, and mine's getting up there too, and it's an older one. It was a handyman down from the sheriff's, and he's thinking that one's going to be replaced. We're talking strategy as far as if we want to start talking about leasing or purchasing. I've expressed that I really, even though those leases for the F-350s are really cheap, just feel wrong driving around in an F-350 to do inspections around town. We talked about the Chevy Equinox, kind of an all-wheel drive, kind of crossover, great gas mileage, good clearance. So we're flirting with that idea in the future, but I'm thinking we're good for a couple of years, and that's why I'm keeping that $1,000 in there just for tires and regular maintenance.
All right, so just to keep in mind, whenever we make a purchase that's more than 5,000, that would be a separate, that would need to be budgeted in our Fund 34, which is our capital projects fund for the general fund. So when we get to that point, just keep that in mind. We don't put capital equipment or infrastructure expenses in these operating budgets. They have to go to a different fund. Just something to keep in mind. So the 1,000 looks like it's on par with the average then, so that's good. And then it looks like you bumped up your fuel.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It looks like right now the 2020 was 2,500. Projection 2,000. I don't know. Yeah, I think that gave me enough in the. Right now we're at 1,064. I'm not sure what to put in there for the year-end projection. I figured about 2,000 should cover the next 3 months. I haven't been driving my vehicle a lot. Cole's been doing most of the inspections. I have done a couple of Casa Valleys and things when he's trying to be in the office, but not quite using them as much during this COVID crisis. So I think we're going to cover, but next year, I don't know if I need to add more. If fuel costs go up, is that something I need to check with Cody or?
Well, I doubt he would know. You know, it's like, who knows what the price of gas is going to be.
So I added 200 to it just to cover any increase.
All right. Professional and technical, what do you charge to that, Bill?
Again, when we go to the ABM, we have Jeff cover for us.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And that was the 250 was the portion from February that he covered for us. We split it with the city to cover all the days. I left it in there for next year. Not sure if we're actually going to need it.
All right. Cell phone can just stay the same. Shouldn't go up, I don't think, unless our policy changes. Is there a reason why you increased that cell phone allowance?
I'm, actually, I think it was,
Is it, maybe it's not, well, it should be, did you add a cell phone to somebody in 2019? Because we did
no,
get a,
we had the extra with Jeff.
oh,
This year cut it down. And I think before that was in 2018 was Cole was added. And that's what bumped it up. So we don't have Jeff's anymore. Okay, we can go back down to that 1560.
all right. Okay, so then special department supplies, this is where you code iWorks.
This is where I code iWorks. And again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you want to go about that. I don't know if you want me to take the entire thing out of my budget for the new portal and the planning portal and the portal home. I think that goes to just over 5,000, almost 6,000. Do you want me to take that out of my budget? Do you want to split it between planning and zoning and myself? Or, I mean, I don't care where it comes from. It might be easier just to pay it all through our office and increase that budget amount to what the new total is going to be.
Well, I mean, we could split it up, but it makes no difference because you and planning are both in the general fund.
Okay.
So, it comes out the exact same way, no matter.
Yeah,
No
so
matter.
it's up to you on that one. I figured 3,000 was probably about my portion. And I know we have that bill coming as soon as they get done with the setup, which should be about the same time as mine was due in November.
So what is the total? You know?
I'd have to get back with you on that. I don't have that. I've got that in the email, but don't have it handy.
All right, I'm just going to make a note on that to come back after we figure out what the total is.
Okay.
And we can split it. It's just a little extra work, though, from the AP side.
And then as long as you realize that that's what that line item is for, and if you're okay with the increase, I don't mind it all coming out of my budget. Seems like it'd make it easier for payment.
All right, and so, we're, Chris Kaufman, we were kind of thinking that the citizen portal, which enables more online remote type applications, that at least for this year, the increase we might want to try to charge to CARES Act money. Do you think that would fly?
Yeah, it's kind of the same answer I gave before, which is that there's not a lot of clear guidance on specifically what can be considered necessary. They basically say it has to be necessary for the pandemic, and that's going to be determined by the officials, the elected officials who are in charge of that. So I don't have a concrete answer. I think if you can make a good argument why it's necessary for the pandemic, then you might be good. And we can always run it by Christina.
All right. Yeah, I would think that, if we're going to be doing, trying to reduce as much as possible in-person type interactions, then it is necessary. Anyway, that's something to think, consider when we start logging our expenses for CARES Act.
I did send some of those emails from the Utah chapter and ICC talking about that specific CARES Act fund and asking for it to be used for building departments to help automate. So I think it's worth a shot. I don't know if they'll buy it, but I could definitely get you some more supporting documentation from those groups that negotiated with the state for that CARES Act.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, send that along.
Okay.
All right, then on inventory, what does this note mean? Need 2021?
codes. So
I-
what we try to do with that is we have to have 3 sets of complete building codes for the 2021 when they get adopted in 2022. We try to get the online version the year before when the code actually gets adopted so that we can start doing trainings and familiarizing ourselves with the new code. And then the following year, we'll purchase the other ones that are required for us to keep on hand. So I try to split it between the 2 years.
So you won't spend anything this year, but you will next, 2000?
Yeah.
For 2021 and 2022? Okay.
But it's the 2021 codes. The city of Utah waits until 2022 after they've been redlined before they adopt them. So we actually adopt a year after the codes are go live.
All right.
But this way we can get a set so we can start familiarizing ourselves, looking at the significant changes and doing trainings and starting to ramp up for the adoption of the 2022 so we're not caught behind.
Okay. And then schooling, so you're done with the expenditures this year at 992?
Yeah. We again, most of these line items that we're not spending anything out of, or not spending anything more out of, it was due to the COVID and we didn't want to spend any of that money. I had Cole scheduled for 2 tests that I told him he couldn't take because we weren't allowed to spend out of that budget. So next year he's going to want to take those tests. And there's another option there too. You know, we have that special budget for education. I don't know how you feel about it, but we could pay for our schooling out of that education fund. There's typically a balance in there. And when we put these classes on, we typically make a little bit of money to pay for the next class. I think there's enough in there that we could eliminate this schooling line item altogether and just pull out of there.
Yeah, but I mean, as we've discussed in the past, I think that, you know, because it's such a small amount of money, really, I mean, like what, that 4, maybe 5,000? I can't remember. We can look at that at a different time, but it's, you know, trying to track the balance on something so small like that, it's almost not worth it. And like I said, to me, it's like not a big deal if your schooling and that, you know, balance exactly to 0. I mean, it just helps offset those costs, and it comes into the general fund, or should come into the general fund, in my opinion. But I do think we have it down in designated funds. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, we've talked about it, I think, before, that it's kind of a lot of administrative work to try to track a balance on something so small. I mean, I'd almost rather just bring it into the general fund, that revenue, and then just budget what you need from schooling, and, you know.
Okay. And that's, I mean, that's fine with me. It's all up to how you want to do it. As long as we can keep enough money in that budget to, right now we've got 2 classes coming up. One's a 16-hour class for electricians, and I'm assuming that's going to cost us around $3,000 or $4,000 for the instructor. And then the plumbing class, the plumbing instructor is actually really reasonable. So I mean, we're looking at probably around $4,000 or $5,000 out of that for instructor fees and submitting to DOPL for the contractor's education. But we should be pulling in at least double that in the fees that we collect for the training.
Well, I guess when we get to the designated fund, which we haven't covered yet, we might have to have you log back in.
Well, again, if you want, we can just wipe that out and roll. We can change this line item for the 2021. We'd have to change this year's and add to it. And then next year's and add to it. If we could have 5,000 in there, I think that covers me for the year for both our schooling and the contractor trainings that we put on. And then that money would just come back in as revenue in the general fund.
All right, I'm just gonna make a note to try to coordinate this schooling line with your designated fund when we get to it.
Okay.
And then here's your general fund revenue line item, building permits. So you're expecting that we'll bring in a total of 388,000 this year?
That's probably it. So what we did was we took the revenue we've had already year to date with some of the bigger projects that are going to be coming in this year. If all of them come in, this is without any small houses, remodels, renovations, things like that, single family homes, but just the big projects, that's about what we're looking at. Next
And
year.
How sure are you that those will get paid this year?
The Country Inn and Suites is 60,000.
Roughly.
And that one, they're chomping at the bit to pull that. We're finalizing things with planning and zoning to get that pulled. So that one should come online. The Love's Travel Stop, they're going to be ready to pull the permit here pretty soon. Sage Creek has 5 more buildings, and they're about 20,000 each. They keep telling us, but that's not one I'm really counting on. So that 388 might be less. It might be closer to 320 if they don't come online. But if they do, that's about what we're figuring. And that, again, that doesn't include any single family residence, duplex, multifamily, any smaller projects that aren't in our radar.
Okay.
But again, next year, I'm not seeing as much because, again, with some of the new ordinance, the overnight accommodations overlay, I don't think we'll see any motels come in. So I think a lot of those bigger projects are going to slow down. We may end up with a couple of bigger projects from a rural crossing if they do some of their multifamily stuff. And there are a few other bigger developments that have gone through. So, I mean, that was just kind of try to be a little on the lower side, but expecting that we weren't going to have a couple of the big projects we had this year.
All right. Okay, well, I'll keep an eye on those, on this year's projections. I want to be, somewhat cautious, but, by, the end of this month, I'd like to try to, establish a fairly safe, conservative figure for that.
Okay. And I think by the end of this month, we should have, I would assume, the Loves and the Country Inn and Suites both issued. And that's a good chunk of that extra we're projecting.
All right. So we'll revisit that again before we submit the tentative budget to the commission. Try and get it as close as we can. All right. Anybody have any questions or comments on the building department's budget? Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Hey, Chris, do you want to let me know when we're going to do the other funds, or do you just want me to get with you?
I'll let you know. I haven't really scheduled the designated funds yet, and so I'll let you know.
Sounds like fun.
And I'll use your doodle poll, I guess, for availability to kind of try to schedule it.
You tell me when, and we'll make sure we're here.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate it.
All right, so the last thing on the agenda is to discuss how we want to potentially revise our sales, use, and excise tax projections. And so let me pull up my spreadsheet where I'm tracking year-to-date revenue. We had a pretty big month in July, so let me pull that up so we can go over it. All right. So at our last meeting, we only had June's figures, and the combined totals of all of our sales use and excise taxes was about 77% relative to June of 2019. And then July comes, and the cumulative is 109.6%. So we actually exceeded 2019 by 9.65% total. And so you can see on our transportation taxes up, 17-18%. Our county optional sales tax is up 13.55%. The healthcare tax is up 16.5%. Restaurants up 9.7%. And even TRT grew by about 2% versus 2019. Sales tax, 16.86% over 2019, and then these car rental taxes went way up, 52% increase, and these are they're both on the same short-term car rentals, but they're calculated differently. I'm not entirely. There's kind of a complication on this new one that's population-based, but it went up 36.25% also.
Hey, Chris, this is Elaine. How much of this would be attributed to the local community?
Attributed to what?
To producing these, some of these taxes, attributed to the locals paying these taxes, other than the TRT. Do we have any idea?
Well, I've calculated, I've run a kind of a baseline, which I would consider to be like our slowest month. And, my estimate for how much the locals pay of general sales taxes, not necessarily TRT, restaurant, or car rental, but the other ones, the ones that are applied to everything. I would say that the local contribution is between 40 and 50%. It's hard to say exactly, but if you compare our, slowest month and use that as like the local baseline,
Right.
and then compare it against total annual collections, it's going to be between 40 and 50%. And so that's what I estimate is the local contribution to general sales tax. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I know there's a lot of talk about trying to diminish tourism, or there has been that conversation over, the whole time that I've been here at the Travel Council. So I guess if we continue to move in that direction with trying to diminish tourism, how does that impact our revenue, incoming revenue? And can we sustain more from the local residents to pick up that slack that would be, diminished from visitation?
You're kind of breaking up. I'm having a hard time understanding you. I can kind of hear you. Maybe you could say that again, but just a little slower and more concisely, because I couldn't quite understand what you were saying.
Okay, sorry about that. the trouble I have over here at the tribal council. If we continue to not promote for visitation, and we essentially have to rely on the local community to pick up the difference in the tax revenue. Is that something that can be done? Because, as we move, as tourism is discussed and the community wants to, basically slow down tourism or not have tourism, what is the possibility of the locals picking up the difference in the revenue that we would be missing?
Well, I don't think that they would pick up any more. I think if our economy slowed down, they would spend less. So I'm not entirely sure what you mean. I mean, we statutorily have to use 48%, of our TRT for the establishment of tourism, recreation, and film. However we define that.
Right.
And so since TRT appears to be picking back up, typically we've been seeing 6, 7, 8% growth in TRT, so 2% is still kind of below what we would normally expect, but it may, continue to pick up. We'll find out when we get August's numbers in, if this July month was sort of an outlier or it's really trending this way, because these are some substantial increases. Normally with general sales taxes, which would be like transportation tax, this county optional, the hospital, and this other sales tax down here, I mean, we typically see 4 to 6% growth in a year. So these figures that we're seeing right now are way above that. So it does make me a little suspicious that we're seeing some kind of outlier, but we won't really know until we get more actuals in.
All right. Okay, thanks.
So, I mean, by the time we have to nail down our tentative budget, we'll hopefully have August's numbers in, but that's the last month that we'll really have available to us for actuals when we have to submit the tentative budget to the commission. I mean, once it goes to the commission, it's still possible to amend it, but it'll have to be via a process with the commission, because I have to submit a tentative budget by the first week in November, and then it switches sort of out of the hands of the Budget Advisory Board and into the hands of the commission. So, I mean, there's still possibilities to continue to refine, but we're going to be limited only to data from August and prior by the time we submit. So you can see that I've, revised projections. And this spreadsheet is sort of kind of what I've, been using to try to project where we're going to end up in 2020. And it could also be useful, obviously for budgeting for 2021. And so I've, taken, in this particular instance, numbers that are pretty strong, but not necessarily as strong as what we see in July, and projecting those through the end of the year. One of the things to keep in mind, though, is even with a really strong recovery, like I'm projecting here, I'm still estimating that we're going to be down about 2,193,000 in 2020 versus 2019, because the losses were so great in the spring that we're not going to be able to, even get back, cumulatively speaking, to where we were in 2019 because the losses were so great in the spring. And so that's something to keep in mind. And, you know, also the rationale for the furloughs and the big budget cuts that we've made, because we have to be able to deal with this particular 2,193,000 projected loss. And so that's just something to keep in mind. But, you know, the recovery is happening faster than I thought it would, for sure. And so I guess, you know, the question is, how do we want to revise our projections for 2021? Because if you recall, with most of the sales taxes, I projected 90% of 2019 numbers, which is probably too conservative. And for the TRT, I think I set it at 85%. So, you know, when things are trending along normally without these big disruptions, you know, it's not terribly difficult to project, you know, within 1 or 2% of what things end up being. But it's a lot harder this time around. I don't know, does anybody have any thoughts on how we should project 2021 sales, use, and excise tax revenues?
Is it going to be a major, I mean, is there a real reason to redo it right now without waiting for August? Or should we just wait and see what August brings and go from there?
Well, you know, it's going to be, when do we normally get the money in, Chris? What day of the month?
Like the 23rd, 24th.
It's just difficult because, you know, we're not going to, until we get a good, you know, reasonably accurate revenue number, we don't know what our bottom line is. And trying to establish a rough bottom line as early as possible is useful because, you know, it can dictate if we have to ask departments to make further cuts than what they've proposed. And if we wait until the 23rd or whatever, it doesn't give me much time to go back to any departments or elected offices and request amendments if, so, you know, when we're budgeting these low, very conservative projections, when I calculate the bottom line, you know, we're probably going to be way in the red, but that may not be a realistic bottom line. You know what I mean? So I do kind of feel like it would be good to bump those projections up as we go so that I can start to see the bottom line, a more realistic bottom line form.
That sounds good.
Chris, this is Gabriel. In your opinion, going too conservative on the projections to all the departments, what is the biggest effect of that sort of action on the departments? Would that result in them sort of not being able to offer raises or, you know, just general effects of that nature?
Yeah, I think it would. You know, the effect would be, let's say, for instance, that we show, you know, that we're some certain percentage in the red. And under normal circumstances, if we end up with a bottom line that's way in the red, we go back to the drawing board and start making big cuts. And so if I'm going to do that and go back to the departments and say, you know, your budget requests put us way over, and we're going to have to figure out a way to make big cuts to balance the budget because we're way in the red due to these conservative, and if it's due to overly conservative revenue projections, then we'll be asking for big cuts that aren't necessary.
Mhm.
And so if we go back to the drawing board and revise everybody's budget way down, and then as the year progresses, we're like, oh, this is way too conservative, these revenue projections, going back and fixing that would be a big job.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I don't think that I would budget, when we look at this here, these figures that I budget, these are really very strong statistics for growth. I don't think I would go quite that high, but I don't think it's out of, it seems reasonable to me to maybe look at historical growth for these particular taxes and plug those numbers in and say, let's calculate that we're sort of just going back to our normal trends. And I think that would be, pretty reasonable if I went back and calculated normal growth trends for all of these taxes and then, ascribe those.
And Chris, are you talking about growth trends over a 24-month period from 2019, or kind of?
Over several years.
Okay, but
I can go back and run a report, like a 20-year report on our revenues and show trends using Excel and build some statistics that kind of give us what we normally expect for growth on average. Like I say, I mean, what we've seen in July is way above average growth for everything really except for the TRT, which had some growth, but TRTs, we were more in the 6 to 8% growth range the last few years, except for 2019, we saw a pretty big dip. So we'll have to kind of evaluate. But these other figures, in the double-digit percentages, that's not really normal. It's not typical. And so I doubt that it will stay that way, where I'm at least suspicious that it will stay that way. But I think, we've definitely, at this point, I'm certain that saying that we're only going to get to 90% of 2019 levels is probably not true for 2021, unless we have some other major catastrophe befall us.
Well, I would say that I would feel comfortable coming in closer to 100% of those 2019 figures if we're going to reproject.
Okay.
And 100% of 2019 is going to be a reduction from what we would normally see with growth in 2020.
Right. So
Yeah.
it still reflects a level of conservatism in the projection, which I think would be still probably wise.
Yeah. I agree. I think we want to be conservative, but just not, to the point that it's becoming unrealistic is not a good thing. So yeah, I'll work something up and kind of produce a report on the growth trends for these taxes over time, and I can send it on to everybody and use those statistics to try to come up with, let's say we're just going to go, assume we're going back to normal growth trends for 2021. And that's probably be, acceptable unless July really is a tremendous outlier and things drop way back down in August, then, we'll have to rethink it.
Hey, Chris.
Yes?
This is Jaylyn. I can't see what you've done with October, November, and December. Are you carrying those so those percentages are carrying out throughout. I guess, you know, obviously November and December are months where we experience a significant drop in tourism. So I guess I'm pretty uncomfortable with leaving those the same for sure. And then I agree with, you know, a hybrid between you and Gabriel, maybe somewhere between 100% and what the normal growth rate would be.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because I'm projecting off percentages, the drop in tourism is already kind of taken into account.
Okay.
You know, because you know, we obviously see big drops in numbers when we go out of season. And so my projections, you know, are based on that drop already. Because there are percentages of that, but you know, these are just numbers I plugged in to try to estimate, you know, what cumulative loss would be looking at, even with a really strong recovery. But I can revise all of these to different percentages that are, you know, lower and more conservative, and then that will help me build, you know, the totals that we would plug into our revised projections.
So one possibility would be to figure out the growth trends, but only build in 1 year's worth of growth from 2019 for the 2021 budget, whereas normally we'd build in 2 years worth.
Yeah.
So you'd be kind of like halving the growth, would be one way to sort of be conservative, but factor in a little bit of growth over 2019.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. But yeah, you know, it's better news than I was expecting, and so, you know, it makes budgeting easier when we're not heading into bankruptcy. Or it doesn't appear that way anyway. All right, anybody have any further comments or discussion on the revised revenue projections? Okay, does anybody have any future considerations? Okay, then I guess that does it for this meeting. And we'll thank you, everybody, and we'll reconvene again next week, same time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
It's 10:55
Thanks, Chris.
a.m. And we are adjourning the meeting at 10:55.